Okay, good morning. Yay, wake up, here we go. It's Wednesday. I am Jeffrey Nassi. I'm the Dean for Academic Resources and Writing Programs. So I work over in the library, in the Learning Labs, and also for the English department. So I'm glad everyone's here, and I know the event really got started yesterday afternoon with some movies. But we have some great authors coming in this week, and I know everyone's really excited about it. So this session we're going to try to make as interactive as possible. Look around, I get it. I know you guys are sleepy. We do have coffee, and we have food coming for y'all. Very soon, 8:30, something like that. So that'll be good. But number one, we want to make this interactive. We want this to make this a conversation. This particular session, we're going to look at the history of wRites of Spring. We're going to kind of talk about student success and how, this is all about you. This is all about the students. And so kind of looking past what can we learn from this event. And we're going to hear from some great people on the video and kind of talk about those things. But in order for this to be successful, we need you to. Come on, I know this is tough. You guys can move up front. I can't be up here all alone like this. So if you wouldn't mind getting up and just coming up front, that'd be great.
Everybody up.
Okay, it looks like we have some faculty and some, are you guys in class here? Or just nothing better to do at 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday? You're in class? And who's your instructor? Professor Stewart in the line chair? Yeah, I guess let me go around and introduce some English faculty. We have Professor Juan Calle, English faculty. Professor Chad Stewart, line shirt, English faculty. Professor Jason Vincent. Is your class here, Jason? No, I don't have it. And, Professor Alberti, she's hiding now. And this is your class here. And is it an 1101 class?
It's 1102.
11. And what do you guys, have you read some of the books for wRites of Spring? Your professor's saying yes, and you guys let it. What books have are you in Professor Alberti's class? Okay, so what's your name? And you finished the book?
Yes. Well, theoretically, I did. You did.
What do you think of the book? It tortures. Good word. And this class, you guys have read Weep Not Child also? No.
No, I talked to them about night women.
Okay. And what do you think of anyone? Any thoughts on the book? Nothing. All right. We're going to try to keep this informal. And like we said, we have, coffee's on its way. But let's just talk a little bit about what wRites of Spring is. It's 25 years old, so you guys are part of history, and thank you for being here. But for 25 years, the English department that's probably older than some of you. For 25 years, the English department's been bringing in authors, a lot of times nationally, internationally recognized authors, like we have this week, are coming in, and yeah, they come and they read, and that's a great part of the presentation, but also they meet with students. And they talk with students about writing and other stuff, just being successful in life and in college. And as someone who's been here just for 10 years and kind of seeing, it can really impact your life. It can really impact student lives, and that's what it's all about. And of course, there are a lot of surrounding presentations, building up to those events. So while you're here for your class today, we appreciate that, and we want to hear from you later on. Make sure you go to some of the other events as well. As a matter of fact, at 9:30 following this one is a great film presentation that if you don't have another class, I encourage you to go to. All right, so it's been around for 25 years, and each year we bring in author or authors, more than one, and we meet with students. And also, the fun part of it is a lot of the classes are reading the same book. So across the campus, I know in English classes and in reading classes and even some of the other classes, some of the history and social science classes, they're reading these books. So a lot of Broward College students are reading these books. And you'll see, hopefully, as you come to the different events, the turnout. Also in the community, people not even going to the college are reading these books and meeting with these authors. So it's an exciting thing, and it's changed. Talking to someone who here, it started off as kind of a small thing. You just brought in someone local, and then the next thing you know, we were in the library auditorium for many years, and we got so filled at points that people were sitting on the floors, and we said, okay, we're going to have to move this over to the Omni, to a bigger venue. And we've had people who've won Pulitzer Prizes. I think we've had 2 or 3 Pulitzer Prize winners, so some great authors that come to you, and this is a great opportunity for you to meet with authors and to talk with them. All right, let's look at, we have 4 video clips, and what I'm going to ask you to do is pay attention to a couple things. Number 1 is the student component. How, as you listen to these people talk, are they talking about student success? Now, I also teach a class at night, and we ask you, why, and you think about these questions. Why are you in college? One of the first things students say is, well, I want to be successful. And I want you to think, what does that mean, be successful, as a college student and in life? What do you mean by success? And as you listen to the video clips, what I'm going to ask you to pay attention to is, what do you hear in terms of your life, in terms of student success? What are you going to get out of this conference this week? What are some of your expectations? And you know what I'm going to do. As a dean, I'm going to walk around with a microphone. I'm going to say, hey, what's your name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan, what did you think about student success from that video? So be prepared for that. Because we do want to hear from you. We do want to hear from you. All right, let's look at one of the videos.
Well, my memories of Rites of Spring are all joyful. As a new adjunct in the department I came in 92 that fall, but 93 was my first Rites of Spring, and I remember using my my graduate thesis on Kate Chopin, because she was the darling then with her novel The Awakening. And shortly after that, maybe 1 or 2 Rites of Spring after that, I began with the film. We would put together a series of scenes from full-length narrative films on that theme. And my memories of the favorite books, the 2 bestsellers, Kim Edwards and The Memory Keeper's Daughter, and Sue Monk Kidd and Secret Life of Bees, those were so well received by the students. They just loved the books, and so it was joyful, again, very delightful to put together films that matched the theme of those conferences, and also to have my book signed. I have a whole collection of signed books from these wonderful conferences. The impact of these Rites of Spring on my students is really the most important thing. I get a kick out of doing it, but it was the audience response that was really the most wonderful and lasting impression. Students would come up to me and talk about how they had either never read a book, or they were so joyful to have a book signed, or how the films reminded them of something in their life. And I would say that the thing that made the most lasting impression, and the reason why I'm here to do my 2014 Rites of Spring, is because of the dialogue that would ensue with the students.
Hello, my name is Deidre O. Robinson Wiggins. I am the mother of 7. I am now 50 years.
Okay, so the first one, Professor Thorner, she's actually, it's a nice segue, she's going to be presenting her film presentation at, I believe it's 9:30 today, right? Following kind of this opening session. I guess our number 1 question is, or something I'm thinking about when I hear that, is she's listed some authors that have been here as part of the presentation. Let's just start with where you're at. Outside of what you're reading for class for Rites of Spring, who are some of your favorite authors? And this helps us get ideas too for future presentations. authors. We scared.
Young man of the country school.
Oh, you are?
Cornell,
And your favorite author?
Ernest Green.
Can you tell us a little bit about Ernest Green and what?
He mainly writes urban stories, like African American urban stories, and it always kind of pertain to like the like life living in the ghetto and like certain situations that people that he gotten into or he know people that gotten into. So it's kind of interesting to me.
Excellent. Yeah, connection to our lives. I know we like to read kind of things that can relate to our own experience. And it's also, at the same token, cool to read about things like, for me, Kenya. I have no relationship with that, but got a lot out of it. Any more? Thank you.
This is my class, so
Don't make me give this to your faculty. They'll be coming right up to you. If you're reading in class. No, that's all cool.
My name is Jacques, and my favorite author is Ernest Hemingway. So,
Why did you say that?
the one we read in class.
Do you know this? Hillswell like Elvis. Not really Catherine Rain. Okay, why? What'd you like about it?
I like the way it was formatted and how it wasn't blunt. It didn't tell you the story right in your face. You had to figure it out.
The style of the writing. You kind of had to put something into it to kind of, as he said, figure it out. Some people like that, some people, not so much. Yes, sir? Let me get you in. Yeah.
Yes, good morning. Deion Smith, ENC 1102, graduate from Dillon High School. My favorite author would have to be Edgar Allan Poe, mainly because I'm prone to horror stories and I love stories that don't have a happy ending, so yeah. And my favorite one by him is Cast of Amontillado.
Dark soul. Anybody else?
Oh, sure.
I'm Shantae. No, I didn't say much.
What did you say?
I said Shantae. Shantae.
She's very soft.
Yeah, very. I would say in our literature book, Steinbeck, the chrysanthemums. That was an interesting story that underhinted like sexuality and like importance of like gender and where women stand. But do we have to actually write like a writer that's like a novelist? Because as a parent, I would say Dr. Seuss, because we read a lot and it helps with the learning of our kids. So.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? It's a wide variety, right? Let's check.
I'm Seth. It's pretty generic, but Stephen King. Mainly because I grew up with him and I read things like Misery and The Stand, and it was really the only books I ever read when I was like a kid, but my mom had like a whole collection of them over the years, so I read them and I really got into them, and I love just like the plot of them and the cleverness of them, and he's really the only author I ever actually got into, so yeah. Stephen
You read
King.
Dr. Sleep yet? The new one?
Mm-mm.
You should get it. It's really good.
Anyone else? Great variety, thank you. All right, let's look at the, and again, we're kind of paying attention to the clips here. Let's look at our second clip and hear what her experiences are with our festival.
Hello, my name is Deidre O. Robinson Wiggins. I am the mother of 7. I am now 50 years old. But one day I went to the Rites of Spring, and there I met an author named Juno Diaz. And there I have the experience of my life. Mr. Diaz, when he starts speaking, oh boy, I thought someone put me on a cannonball and blew me into another country. This author used language that we were not able to use, we could not use when we were growing up. This language was so gruesome. I couldn't understand why would they allow a man like this to even write any novel, to allow anyone to read anything that he had written. But as time passed on, I did some research on him. But before that research, after his discussion, he had a question and answer period. And I popped up out of my seat and I asked him a question, why would you even use language like this? And he chuckled a little and he said, I'm not in church. Okay, well I went to church all my life. So I knew that I wouldn't even want my children around him at that time. As I read more about him and I Googled so many things about this gentleman, I realized that he used language as a metaphor about the characters that he was trying to project at that time in the Dominican Republic. I decided that I would search him a little farther, and I did some thinking, and later on in my life, I decided to make a change. And that's when I became a critical thinker.
I'm Patricia Johnson from the English department, and...
All right, very good. A couple things stand out to me as I listen. Now that's a student, a former student anyways, an alum, talking about her experience with Juno Diaz, which I remember that Rites of Spring distinctly. And it's, well, yeah, he uses a lot of profanity and very colorful metaphor in some of his writing. What is a metaphor? 1102? They're both 1102s? She's talked about language as metaphor. What does that mean?
I think Cornell. Cornell knows.
Right here.
Name is Phil Amari. Metaphor is a comparison that doesn't use like as opposed to simile.
What do you think she was talking about language?
I think she was specifically speaking on that because he would use the language to describe the character, right?
But more importantly, what does that mean for us? Right? You're studying that. What does that mean for you as people, as writers? You use metaphor.
I'm curious, she mentioned language, but you're how did you guys feel about the use of language and violence? Because I read both of them, and that's one of the first things that jumped out to me. I'm just curious what some of you guys have read that book feel about it. We did not read that in my class. We just read it.
Or what metaphors stick out in your mind from the book? No? What else she talked about at the end there? She said, and that helped me become a critical, and she was talking about metaphor, a critical thinker. What do we mean by that? Anybody have any, what is critical thinking?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Machesley Esther Faustin. To answer your question, what is critical thinking? In my opinion, in her experience, she was basically in a box, and she had a reserved opinion and did not like the idea or the profanity or the way the author wrote his book. And she even mentioned that she wouldn't even want her kids to be around or even reading his book. So to think critically, she stepped outside the box, and she went as far as to research the man and to accept or to even consider his writing. So to think critically, you have to step out of your comfort zone and to think outside of the box.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Critical thinking.
It's me again. But I think critical thinking means to find a way to comprehend what someone else is trying to say and why they're saying it.
And the authors that are coming this week, what do you think they're trying to say? What did they say to you as you read it? What did you get out of that, out of the text? He's coming here, so you guys have read the book. Are there any questions you have? All right. Okay, so no happy ending? Okay, so why not? All right.
You know,
I'm sorry.
so I was wondering.
Hi. Okay. I was wondering if you're talking about Weep Not Child. Yeah. Because this is something that I discussed with my class. Because so many people reading this book, I think at the start of Weep Not Child, you have this wonderful beginning, right? This loving family and education. Education's so important, and then things just start going downhill pretty quickly. But the author plays a little trick on you. The story does have a tragic ending. You know, I think a failed suicide attempt where he doesn't, where the protagonist doesn't feel hopeful afterwards. You could call that a tragic ending, but it's a little trick the author plays on you because he ends the novel at the lowest point in George's life. You know, I think it's George. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
We had kind of a, we just decided what we were going to call their character in class. In Goje, which is probably totally wrong, but it's everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a convention.
Yes.
I would ask, from Weep Not Child, is education as important as we make it? Is education really freeing as our parents would like us to think?
And this deals with the theme of colonialism in Weep Not Child. I think the author Jonathan Kosal and other authors have said this, that education is either revolutionary or it's indoctrination. And in Weep Not Child, we see indoctrination, you know, because he's taken away from the language of his people. He's taught English, he's not taught his language, right? Yeah. So it can be important, but it depends on how you're taught and what's done with it. And in the case of Weep Not Child, it's been corrupted by the British imperial powers.
A question I would like to ask about Weep Not Child is what led the author to write a story like this? Was it based off his personal life, or did he knew others about it, or is it a story that he just came up with as on the spot?
I don't know that one, and I can only speculate. My colleague Jason Vincent, hi Jason. he's the one responsible for the handout I gave you from a book called Decolonizing the Mind, which is by the same author. And I don't know if you studied any more of that, but I thought there were some strong hints in that essay. The first essay, Decolonizing the Mind. And I was wondering if you'd studied that anymore and had any thoughts about this.
A little bit. But the interesting thing about that book and the interesting thing about the discussion that you're having and how the book ends and what this is saying about education is that one of the elements of that book that seems to be important to Tiago is the idea that we don't have an answer. That education many times isn't about finding the ultimate answer, that it's about identifying a problem or identifying a conflict and thinking one's way through it, which goes back to the idea of critical thinking that you were bringing up earlier. So in essence, the idea of decolonizing the mind is to embrace problems and to think about conflicts and how we're kind of jamming them together, rather than just trying to come up with an answer so that we feel better and we can go on.
And just to make a point about that too, one thing we discovered, along with what you just said, Professor Vincent, which is about engaging with the problems, is that Goje, the main character, Weak Not Child, we decided was pretty much an observer. He never really engaged, and so that last line, "I'm a coward," when he opened the door for his two mothers, that he kind of, things happened to him, and he never really engaged, whereas his brothers actually took up arms, and his father actually participated in a strike. He never really did, and so one of the things we thought is that, yeah, you could identify the problem, but then you need to be prepared to get your hands dirty and actually participate in the solution, or finding the solution. And at least that's what we came up with in my class.
Awesome. Critical thinking. And part of critical thinking is just about asking questions, and you can see it in a good discussion there. Any other questions that you're thinking about in terms of the novel as we get ready for our author to arrive?
Yes, ma'am. You get there?
I'm sorry, I can't see. Help. Wait.
Why did last minute they decided to kill Mr. Holland? Why not do it at the beginning?
How'd you wait to kill Mr. Howell? Any thoughts on that from the students, faculty, on the timing of Mr. Howland's death?
I think it would have made him a lot happier. Would have been.
What do y'all think? Why so late in the novel? And hopefully you've read it. Spoiler alert, right? Mr. Howland's is killed. Is there a reason? Why do you think the author maybe chose that? What was the decision he was making to keep him around throughout the novel? Excuse me. Why not just kill him off on page 5?
In my opinion is that perhaps that he was an antagonist that would indirectly affect the main character, so they'll need like someone to participate and stir up things in their own country and make things even worse. So that's why they want to keep Hollins around.
Yeah, you gotta have the bad guy around, right? You gotta keep the story going. That's not good? Would have been a good story if he had died early? Okay.
You have your hand up, sir? You have your hand up?
Any other questions? Critical thinking, questions about either of the novels?
There's a question I want to ask. Because a lot of students expressed, this was short and happy ending, or Mr. Howland should have died earlier, but imagine if everything had gone well for Jiroji and Goto and his family. How exciting would that have been to read? With a very happy life and nothing happens bad. For those of you who write,
I'm sorry, the third.
Yes, my name is Manu. What I was thinking is, if the story goes like as happy, with a happy ending, it would make it look like an ordinary story. So it wouldn't be really exciting to read. Like, at the end of the book, it would just be like you just read something really ordinary. That's how.
Did you like the book?
Oh yeah, I like the book. I like the style. I also like the story behind the.
So you like that?
I like that.
Can you relate, man? Can you relate?
Oh yeah, like me being from Africa, it's kind of like telling me like this is something from Africa. This is something original from Africa. It's really a good story.
Great.
Awesome. It's a real connection. What are the questions, comments you have about either novel that you could throw out to? Okay.
Because I think if he had a happy ending, I think I would have more questions. Like I would ask myself, like, what happened to him and the daughter of Jacobo Mwakapi? I don't know her name, but I would just ask myself, like, did they get together? Did they not get together? Because at the end, they told each other they loved each other, right? So it's like, what's gonna happen in the future? And then, are they like, oh, and if the city, is it gonna get better? I would have so many questions, but now that it wasn't a happy ending, it all went down.
Okay, some good questions in terms of what happened with the relationship. Any ideas? Critical thinking. What do you think about the relationship?
That's closer to you.
I think more than anybody in the story, Georgie probably had the power to influence and to probably make the change because he had a relationship with the girl, and that probably could have changed the ideas of the people. And as well as when he met Mr. Holland, him and Mr. Holland's son Stephen shared similar fears. And so I think for most, if he was the type of person just like his father, if he had somewhat of his father and his brothers in him, the story probably could have turned out a little bit more better.
And you hinted at a couple relationships there, right? There's lots of relationships and interactions between the characters in the novel, and the relationship between Njoroge and his father, and then the daughter's relationship with her father, and then the son you mentioned with his father. There was a whole set of different relationships. Any other questions you kind of want to throw out to your classmates here, colleagues? All right, let's look at the third video.
I'm Patricia Johnson from the English department, and the one year that I really remember was the year that I presented. The theme for wRites that year, this was probably either 1999 or 2000, and this was male-female images in literature. And I decided that I would personify Dame Allison in Geoffrey Chaucer's Wife of Bath. So I put together a PowerPoint presentation, which PowerPoint was relatively still new at the time, and I titled it, "What Do Women Really Want?" And I included medieval paintings and music in the PowerPoint, and learning how to do the different fade outs and the different rolling in of each PowerPoint slide. And I started out with going to Central Campus and seeing Deborah Kondelik in the theater department, and she lent me this beautiful red velvet gown. And to dress up as Wife of Beth, I got a wax crayon or a wax pencil, and I created a gap between my teeth because that's what she had. Wander april in the shora sota, the druta of marchas perse judrota, and on and on and on. And then throughout the presentation, there were different slides that I read from that had some medieval parts to it. And I remember Lynn Thorner and Trish Joyce, Donna Samet, and Claire Gurgis Hunter sitting around me in one of the classrooms with my laptop, and I was putting together this PowerPoint and putting music in it and images in it, and they were helping me with the timing and, you know, with different parts of it. So it was definitely a wonderful joint effort that went into the presentation.
My name is John Moskowitz, and I'm in the English department.
Okay, and do any of you know Professor Johnson? Had? No? Oh. That's a great memory of hers, you know, putting together that presentation. And before we got talking about questions and our experience with the event, and I think Professor Vincent raised an interesting question about language. We've been talking a little bit about language this morning. You want to go ahead?
So one of the things that my class noticed about Weep Not Child is how much they were struggling not only with names of characters, but with the use of language that doesn't get translated, whether it's names of tribes or concepts or ideas. And I sort of want to throw it out to our captive audience here. How many of you speak more than one language? Raise your hand. Wow, quite a few. This is why I love teaching here. So one of the things that I would like to ask those of you who do is, how difficult do you find it to explain a concept or an idea from another language and talk about it to someone who doesn't speak that language, who only speaks English? Tell us a little bit about that process and how complicated that can be.
It can get very complicated because not all words translate well, and you have to add more words to make the, like, for example, one word in English could mean different things, and when you translate it to another language, you have to use more words to explain exactly what you're talking about.
Anybody else?
Personally, I would use like a character from another movie, a character from another book, or something else to truly show what I'm talking about, you know, or to research it and explain it to the best of my ability, because it's extremely, extremely hard to even translate it exactly how it is, you know. To say I'm 8 and 20 in English, it's really, in French, it's really, I have 20 years. So it's not much of a research, but it's really difficult. Sometimes, you know, you just can't explain it. You just say it like it is. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, I'm sorry. You know, so.
With some things, like me personally, I'm self-teaching myself how to speak Japanese. So when it comes to like certain words that is made from Japanese origin, like I do research on certain things, on like certain subjects in relating to Japanese. So I actually like have to teach like certain others like how that specific customer idea works. So it's not like it's mainly pertain to mainly to bilingual people who speak in their language from certain customers. So like if you know like certain things about that certain language and their customs too.
Okay, let's watch the fourth video clip here.
My name is John Moskowitz, and I'm in the English department. Mine was 91. I was a new faculty for the 90-91 season. This building that you see behind me, our amazing library, was not in existence. I think the library was in building 49, downstairs. And Rites of Spring was held in the English department. And my presentation was in 47, room 300. And I don't remember the exact title, I know the subject. It was Willie and Biff Loman of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, Parallels Between American Fathers and Sons, including Ralph and John Moskowitz, my father and myself. One of the things we did when we started discussing movies, sometimes we were fortunate enough to have someone involved in a film directly. So here we have the director of it, who could give us all these insights and little details, both before the film and after, and then we show the film. And it's a very touching film, it's a wonderful film, and it surely deserved the Oscar that it received. So that was one of my Rites of Spring's highlights. There was another one. I showed an excellent film called Mother and Child that was very controversial. When it was ready to roll, sitting near Jeff, and he started breaking out into a sweat that got deeper and deeper for the whole film. It was edgy, etc. And the reason he was so nervous was that our president of the college was in the audience. And she's very vocal. And as soon as the film was over, she jumped up and she said, "This is one of the best films we've ever had," etc., etc. And there was this huge sigh of relief from Jeff, and I got all red-faced, but a big grin because, whew. And it was an excellent film, but it was edgy. And sometimes we do that at Rites of Spring. It's not all smiles and a little tear in the corner of your eye. Sometimes it packs a wallop. And I would suspect that the Rites of Spring this year will have a number of controversial moments, and it should be great.
And that's funny, I haven't seen that video clip before this morning. I'm Jeff. I'm the guy who was talking about breaking out into sweat. And I remember that Rites of Spring. And yeah, it was a sex scene. And I'm sitting there next to the campus president. I think I was the dean at that time, and I was like, oh my goodness. And yeah, that's funny. But he's right that part of the event is to invite disagreement. And we heard the one person talking about her reactions to profanity and controversy and some things that to some people may be offensive. Other people, it's art, it's expression, and it ended up being a great film and a great Rites of Spring. But yeah, so I guess the question is, as you think, were there parts in the novels that you didn't agree with, or that you found offensive, or what are some of your reactions in that regard to the book, or to either of the books, actually? All right, we're gonna start calling on people. That's about.
Yes, my name is Carl, and the scene in The Weep Not Child where Georgie's teacher was stopped by those policemen and then slaughtered right there. I thought that was pretty graphic. The way the author described it. As I was reading, I was like, wow, I can't believe this is actually taking place. It just took me by shock.
Thank you.
Is it on? Is it on? Okay. We've heard a lot about Weep Not Child, and maybe it's because it was a shorter novel, but I read them both, and as I'm sure like most of my colleagues did, but let's just say if you would have read that book that I've seen you're talking about would have seemed like a fairy tale compared to the Book of Night Women. And I was just curious, the guys who have been reading that, you've been conspicuously quiet. I'm just curious, again, I'll bring that question up. I, as a person who I'm not a prude in any stretch of imagination, but that book, I won't say shocked me, but I read it on a plane, and it just sort of washed over me. And I'm just curious as to someone who has probably not read many books or have read a book like this, or even excerpts from it. Did you have trouble with it? What did it do? What do you think the reason was behind the use of such graphic material? Anyone?
And also for those of you who, for the classes that have not read it, can you just give us a quick synopsis?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Just gonna guess at it. It's actually about a slave uprising in the late 17th, early 18th century in Jamaica, and it's written in the main character. It's written from a first-person narrative perspective in a patois. So the entire novel is written in a patois, and it is scene after scene of rape and torture and how it's, which I'm sure is, I mean, historically, it was, the worst you could possibly happen to you is be a slave on a sugar plantation during that time. And it was what happens when humanity is just drained away and these women get together and plan an uprising. And I won't give it away what happens, but it is a very meticulous, and there's a sort of a love story in the middle of it where one of the main character is a child of a slave woman and one of the overseers, and so she's half white. She has these green eyes, and so because of that and her beauty, she kind of is a little bit different than the other slaves, but then ultimately, through a lot of machinations, she ends up being just as abused, but then starts sort of this relationship with one of the other white characters who's Irish in the story. And it's a very interesting story, but it is told from a very, very blunt, very kind of in-your-face sort of style. And to not give too much away, you should read it. It's an excellent book, but I just was curious as to what you guys thought about it. Those of you who read some of the excerpts from it. What did you guys read? Which parts did you guys read, Bird? Which excerpts? Did you guys read the whole novel or just? Oh, just.
Well, unlike Professor Chad, I am a prude. And it was very, very difficult for me to get through it. I mean, Seth of this talked about how he's read every single Stephen King novel ever made except the one you suggested, and I can't even read those. So my students got a sampling of it, but I couldn't honestly get through it. But I felt the same way about Junot Diaz, and his works.
Good morning, everyone. My experience with it, I think I got through the first chapter, but I guess being Jamaican, being female, having read, been exposed to the history, it was just not, I couldn't deal with it, and I don't think I would have been effective in passing it on to my student. I don't think I would have been able to present it properly, to do it justice.
Yeah, so for those of you that do not know, we have two writers coming this week. We'll be talking about Weep Not Child by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and then Marlon James's novels, The Book of Night Women. Those two books. So if you haven't read one or the other, as you can hear from what we're talking about, the Book of Night Women is a powerful